number 131 of the LSR Podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by the brightest minds in all of the gaming industry. I have with me Adam Candee, Dustin Gouker. You can follow them on the Twitter machine for free, and you should just smash the button at Adam Candee, 2 E's, no Y, at Dustin Gouker. If you would want to follow me because you hate yourself, at Matt Brown, M2. Guys, we are going to be joined by a very special guest. John Pappas is going to join us talking about everything going on in 2022. But before we get to him, we are going to talk some Draymond Green prop bets. We are going to talk why I am so incredibly happy for our very own Dustin Gouker right here on the podcast. But let's kick things off here, Adam, with New York. As we know, Saturday got things going over there in New York, and it was a long time coming, but man, it's finally here.
It is. It's here, and as anyone in New York will tell you, there is absolutely no ignoring it. When we reach the point in terms of the cultural Rubicon where we've crossed over to Conan O'Brien tweeting out on Sunday, "I haven't seen a sports betting ad in 7 minutes. Am I dead?" Then clearly the sports betting launch was seen by all in New York. 4 operators launched their sports books. There are another 5 to come. That'll be on a rolling basis as those are available. But DraftKings, along with FanDuel and Rivers and Caesars, all getting going here in New York. And from all accounts, especially what we saw from GeoComply, which of course measures the amount of times that folks attempted to log on, we saw 17 million geolocation pings around the New York area over just the first weekend of sports betting in New York, which obviously shows the appetite was not just about those who were going to New Jersey to place their wagers. There are many more folks in New York who are interested in legal sports betting. They're going to have a number of options here before long. Another one of the questions we had, were the bonuses going to be as generous as in some other places? Well, early on, when you've got Caesars offering 4 figures and some still pretty generous bonuses from the other companies as well, then you would say, yeah, it looks like the bettors might still be able to get in here pretty well on the early side. Now, we do have an article up at Legal Sports Report right now where a UK-based analyst firm called it, quote, mutually assured destruction if all of the operators continue to bonus at the level that they are with the tax rate in New York. But as anyone in the sports betting world will tell you, that's a problem for another day.
Yes. I mean, I was going to say it's so easy when you come out that with at the very beginning, but it's like, listen, we knew what was going to happen at the very beginning. Yes, it's not sustainable over the course of the lifetime of what's going on there, but I mean, everybody knew what was going on. I saw the sensationalized headline as well. Dustin, I just did some cursory kind of looking around, just Google Trends, Google things like that or whatever. Like, yeah, outside of just the pings that we know from all of that, I mean, even on the internet, I mean, people were, this was as massive a thing as we thought it was going to be. I mean, I was just looking and everybody was trying to figure out what was going on there. And I think this goes to show too, you know, a lot of people that are just way too close to the sun were like making all these snide comments of like, yeah, like this will like 90% of people that are making their, you know, that are signing up for sports books today, like this is really their first bet they've ever made, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, listen, man, when you live in the bubble, I get it. Like all you see is what's inside the bubble. But no, this is a huge, massive thing. There are a lot of people who aren't going to go out of their way to seek out how to go place a bet. But if it's very easy for them to do right in front of them, then yes, they will take the plunge.
Yeah, one person on the sports betting Twitter posited that there were 0 people who placed their first sports bet ever in New York. I will happily take the over for whatever amounts. You're like, give it. There are people who placed their first bet, whether, I mean, you know, with a sports book at least.
Yes.
You know, maybe not. Maybe you've done it with friends or whatever. But I 100% guarantee you this is the first time for a lot of people because. Yeah, you got inundated with ads. You have legal options that are very easy for you to get into right now. You're not going to, like, not everybody's going to their local bookie in New York or going offshore, which is not easy to do all the time. So yeah, this is big. I think the other thing that I'm seeing in the chatter and just like numbers and things like that we're seeing, I think Caesars for the first time is really in the conversation with the others. Like DraftKings and FanDuel, I think they have a huge advantage in New York because they made huge pushes in DFS. They have the databases already. They don't have to spend quite as much to acquire new customers. They already have a lot of these new customers. But I think Caesars really kind of moved the needle. They're in there with Rivers and DraftKings and FanDuel, like Adam said. And I'd say they're. I mean, I'm not going to say they're 1 or 2, but I think they're closing the gap real quickly. And again, from those ubiquitous ads, like you see in Caesars ads on national broadcasts all the freaking time. I can't turn on a sports event without seeing Caesars right now. They are paying heavily for the customer acquisition and to get their name out there, but they're doing it. And the other example, just saw them sign a deal with Michigan State, be their official sportsbook and online casino provider today too. So it's there's a lot to going on in New York. With MGM not in yet, they're a little bit behind. But they've been, arguably 3 or 2, depending on what market they've been in there. So lots going on. And yeah, this is a big deal. And just a pure number of people that can bet on New York. Yes, you're counting on large numbers, right? You're losing money by doing these, but you're getting customers and, millions of customers potentially in the long run for New York if you're in the early days.
And I have 4 words for you there, Adam, as to, I'll count that first. Is 1 word. Dang, maybe it's 5 words. Whatever. JB Smoove and Cooper Manning. That's what's going on in New York right now. Everybody loves Cooper. Self-deprecating humor is the way to go. Love the fact that he's the other Manning in all of these commercials. Well done on Cooper Manning. I'm glad that he's finally getting some camera time himself.
I like that the plan seems to have been for Archie Manning that Cooper was the one who didn't have the athletic talent. So we'll let the other 2 build up the brand for 25 years, and then we'll bring in Cooper on the back end, perfectly ready to go.
Yeah.
Just a couple of quick things to add to what we were talking about here. I'm not going to give the professional sports bettor who put that 0% number out there the credibility of even saying his name, but he's an idiot. He's an absolute stone-cold moron, and I hope he's listening to this to hear those words out of my mouth, because that is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard anyone say about the legal sports betting market. The idea that everybody who was going to bet in New York was already betting somewhere else shows a complete fundamental lack of understanding of the dynamics of the legal market. So stay offshore. Stay exactly where you've been, and leave us the hell alone with your dumbass commentary.
If anyone's wondering how Adam feels about that, you can just rewind the last 30 seconds of the podcast, and it will be certainly beat into your skull. But I mean, listen, look, I have anecdotal evidence for this, which is just, it's not even in New York. It's in Louisiana, where it is very hard still to make a bet, by the way. It's still not mobile in Louisiana. And I have friends of mine who have never bet before who are actually making the trip down to the little crappy casinos to bet, like in these various places. So, I mean, like not everybody is going to go out of their way to make a bet, but the easier that it becomes to make a bet, then the more likely they are to make a bet. And I think that if you just really think that through, then you come to that conclusion pretty logically.
I have one tiny footnote to New York too, and I like to absolutely crap on sports betting, social media, and commercials. I do think the Caesars commercials have gotten a little better, but they also did a thing. It wasn't a commercial, but Kenny Mayne. Did you guys see this? Kenny Mayne doing the servers coming in on a plane to New York for Caesars. Absolutely hilarious. I thought they had Kenny Mayne doing a live shot, like a plane coming in with the servers. The servers are gift wrapped. It's amazing. It was really good content. I enjoyed it. I'm not the target audience, but I enjoyed it.
We also have a story up at Legal Sports Report right now talking about the deluge of advertising, which, to the point of what Dustin was saying, Caesars certainly was among the tops in impressions for folks in terms of those ads nationally over the weekend.
So let's talk about a prop bet scenario here, Adam. And this is, look, every now and then, like we said, there's going to be these weird little quirks that happen along the way, which will bring up nice little talking points for us. And so one of those did happen here recently, and I think it's worth us giving a couple of minutes to.
All right, so if you weren't aware of this, and chances are you might not have been because it was happening during Sunday Night Football, the return of Klay Thompson to the Golden State Warriors is one of the bigger stories in sports, frankly, thus far this year. And Draymond Green, his teammate, is not healthy right now. He has a calf injury, but Draymond Green wanted to be on the court, actually on the court, live action, when Klay Thompson first went back into the game for the first time in more than 2 full years after all the injuries he's been through. Now, a couple of things that are important to note here. The information leaked out on Twitter during the day, and then the Warriors themselves put out the information during the day that Draymond Green was going to get out there on the court, but
ceremonial, essentially, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and I'm getting to the point of ceremonial to say that he was just going to be out there for the tip, right? Now, was that known for sure going into, say, Saturday night that Draymond wouldn't be able to play more than that? No, but the information was then telegraphed during the day. So at a number of sports books, we know how popular the same game parlay option has been for people. Some folks who thought they were going to get one over on the sports book put in a healthy amount of same game parlays on Draymond Green unders on his prop bets. Well, the question then becomes, when is the bet action? And for most times, for any sort of player prop, it is when the game starts and that player is active in the game that you now have action on those bets. Now, of course, it was a ceremonial situation. Some of the sports books were not particularly happy with this. They, in response to these bets, we saw numerous reports of bettors being limited, being potentially banned, and there were a lot of feelings about this. Ultimately, most of the legal books were decided to pay out, and they paid out millions. This was a multi-million-dollar loss on this situation. Matt, I'll throw it back to you because you're heavily involved in this part of the space as well. My initial reaction was that the information was out there for everybody.
Yeah.
And we are all in an information market. And if the sports books were not able to react to that information before bettors, tough cookies. Because that is what we work against every day as bettors, is trying to have as much, if not more, information than the sports books. And most times we don't. Most times they are operating ahead of us with their very large staffs of people and adjusting those lines as they happen, as the information comes in real time. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for the books in that situation. But what did you think when you saw that?
Yeah, I a couple of different opinions here. One, the books put it up. They should be on top of every shred of information that comes out. They paid out. They should have had to do all that. At the same time, if you were one of the dudes who went in and put in these gigantic same game parlays and thought that you were going to just be welcomed back with open arms, then you don't know how this works either, right? And so these guys that are complaining that like, oh, now they're not going to let me bet as much and whatever, it's like, yeah, that's how this works. If you take advantage of a situation, then yes, they are going to limit your action and they are going to limit where you're able to bet on things. I have personally reached out to sports books before and pointed out a bad line. Like I have personally gone to them and said, like, hey man, somebody fat fingered this or whatever, or some kind of something or whatever, because again, it doesn't do me any good as a guy who bets all the time to take advantage of stuff like that, because I'm going to get limited or banned or whatever, anything like that. And so I have it's twofold. One, the sportsbooks have to be on top of every shred of information that comes out that's out there. And if they put something up, they have to honor what they put up and they have to pay out. All of that, absolutely agree with. On the flip side, these people who are losing their minds that they made 5 figures and stuff off of these crazy bets and are shocked that they put one over on the sports book and the sports book doesn't want their business anymore. I also am kind of like, well, what did you think was going to happen? Like, what did you exactly think was going to happen? And Dustin, look, I get it. I'm a little bit more in tune with how that works than most people are or whatever. But I think anyone with any sort of understanding is like, oh, yeah, I'm probably taking advantage of this situation.
Now we're in a world where it's not a democratic right to bet at sportsbooks. If you take advantage of them, they are going to then not let you bet. That's been pretty clear. So is that absolutely right? Maybe not. But it seems like a lot of these have been paid out. Like DraftKings, I think, for instance, paid out the unders, voided the overs on Draymond, right? But yeah, I mean, also single game parlays are a huge source of revenue. We know they crush with these things. That's why they promote them all the time. You basically hit a free, you get some free legs in it if you're throwing Draymond in them. And I'm with Adam. I'm not sure I feel a ton of sympathy. Like and especially some of these are partners. Some of these books are partners of the NBA, and somehow official data didn't get to them in time, and they didn't get the information, and they had bad lines or they didn't adjust to it quickly. So I'm definitely in the middle where I was like, you should know what to expect, but if you're a book, you have to people like to say in Nevada, action plays, right? You hung the line, you got to stay behind it. I think there's some of that, and if there's more of this kind of stuff that happens, like it's going to leave a bad taste in people's mouths from the consumer side too.
Yeah, Adam, basically where I'm at is I have no sympathy for anyone involved, right? Like I have no sympathy for the casino side. I also have no sympathy for the bettor side of the people who are like, well, how come I can't take your $12,000 that I got for free and still you allow me to just play at your casino? Like, I just have no sympathy for any of the people involved in it.
Well, I mean, out there on social media, I thought Rufus Peabody made a great point. And he said, look, I don't have any sympathy for you either if you got banned out of this situation. Yeah. We all know what this is. If you're going to take advantage of one of these mistakes, make it worth it. Right. Like, just know that this is your one shot. And if you're gonna go in there and you're gonna take advantage, then make it worth your time. Now, one other thing I want to add to this that Dustin just said about partnership. And again, I'm not going to report this as fact. I'm just going to tell you that our LSR team heard this anecdotally, that at least one of the sports books was considering saying something to the league about these ceremonial starts and what it would mean to their action, et cetera, et cetera. You want to have the real first scandal of U.S. sports betting? Have it get out there that a sports book is talking to the league about how to manipulate game action. While it might sound like something that the league would, at least listen to from a sports book, the perception angle on that a sports book is trying to dictate action on the court would be absolutely disastrous. So I truly hope, even behind the scenes, that this is not what happened, that sports book that we heard mentioned thought better of it, because that would be a terrible idea.
Guys, let's take a minute to talk to public affairs and government relations expert John Pappas just about everything that's going to be going on here in 2022. So gracious to give us a few minutes of his time. Now join us here on the pod, a very special guest, John Pappas. Go way back, John. You probably don't even remember me from back in the poker days, but man, it's been a long time. State Advocacy Director for Idea Growth, longtime gaming advocate. Really do appreciate having you here on the podcast.
Happy to be here. Thanks for including me.
So where are we going to start here? I guess we should have you set a line. We always like to set lines on things here. Over under on number of states that legalize online sports betting in 2022. Go.
Wait, I think I got my notes wrong. I thought I was here to pick the NFC wildcard games. Is that not?
That's a different podcast.
This isn't a podcast. Okay. Sorry.
Sir, you need to listen closer to the LSR podcast. I know you hear Matt Brown over here and you're used to getting all your great NFL knowledge, but this is a different show.
You said over under on states to legalize
online sports betting in 2022.
I think 4.5 is a good number.
So then what out of that? So what are your most likely states of states that haven't passed anything yet? What are you guys looking at? I mean, I'm sure we've talked about them in the past, but tell us some of the states we should be watching for.
Sure. I think some of the top states to look at are, and there's really different kind of buckets to look at. There are states that the legislature is going to pass, and there are states that where the voters may get an opportunity to vote on it. Missouri is, I think, a top target for states to pass legislation. North Carolina, Kansas and Missouri may go hand in hand. Another potential state, which I think is more of a long shot, is Massachusetts, which has got bills that have passed in one form or fashion over a number of years but can never get across the finish line. Maine is another state where there's legislation already sitting there waiting to be enacted, but hasn't yet gotten to the governor. So there's we're in this kind of the second session of a 2-year legislative session. So there's a lot of bills that have moved kind of halfway there, but haven't gotten across the finish line. So we're really looking at those states where you don't have to start over new again and get new bills introduced and pushing the process forward. I think states like Kentucky that have been trying to do this for a long time, I don't see much hope that they're going to get a bill done in a short legislative window. And then we have some big states, right? Georgia, where you could get the legislature to approve a ballot measure for kind of a broad gaming expansion effort. And then you could have somewhere like a California, where we know sports betting is going to be on the ballot. It's just a question of, will it just be retail only, or will there be a question on mobile sports betting?
So, John, I'm curious because you've been involved in the legislative side of this, going back to the beginning. What would you say are sort of the lessons learned through the first 3+ years of the legal era when it comes to dealing with legislators, with regulators, in trying to craft a piece of legislation, pass a piece of legislation that is going to be beneficial both to the industry and to the state that is looking to maximize its tax revenue?
Well, I mean, I wish I could say that there was a single model that states were following. I mean, I think, quite frankly, if everyone had their druthers, we'd say, hey, New Jersey's done this pretty well. Let's follow the New Jersey model. But that's not the way it works. Every state's unique. Every lawmaker has their own twist that they want to put on legislation. And more importantly, every state has various stakeholders. So you have some states that are going to have tribal interests. Some states are going to have a very strong land-based casino presence. You have some states that have none of that, like Tennessee, and they've taken an approach that's completely different than everybody else. So it's really going to be a state-by-state approach. I wish I could say that there is, a model for every state to follow. And I think there should be, but it's unlikely that that's going to happen. So I think the best approach is to evaluate kind of the playing field, know who the players are, know what the desires are for the state. For some states, revenue is not important, right? Some states are flush with money right now because of, believe it or not, because of federal money from COVID and other things. So coming to them and saying, hey, money is going to be, this is going to be a panacea to your budget, they say, well, we don't have a budget issue here. But some states care about consumer protection. Some states care about this illegal black market. Some lawmakers say, hey, I know people that have lost money playing, sports betting on illegal sites, and we think we should legalize it. So there's a whole host of factors I think you have to evaluate, and that really comes state by state. There's just not a blanket that we can lay over the whole country. I wish there was, but there's not.
The other obvious question out here, we talked about which states would legalize. We have states that have legalized and are still on the sidelines. Louisiana is the one I think we're closest to. Maryland and Ohio are also legalized. Can you give any insight from talking to regulators about when you think any of these states might be up and running?
I think we'll see Louisiana before the Super Bowl. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something the first week of February. I know that the companies are ready and rearing to go, and so I just think I think that's going to happen before the Super Bowl. Maryland and Ohio, I think, are a ways off. We've got some time there. Maryland has a very unique system where they have not only the regulatory agency, which is the lottery, but they have this sports wagering advisory council that has to determine if a operator is qualified by having enough minority participation in their sports betting business. And they haven't even yet gotten through a diversity study that they're required to do or an analysis. So I think we're several months away from even knowing what Maryland's going to expect from mobile sports betting to having bets placed there. I think best case in Maryland is going to be in the late part of Q3. And Ohio, as it stands right now, Ohio is telling us that, they think Q4, late Q4 for them. And that's because they have a statutory mandate to have a universal launch date, not just for mobile sports betting, but for all different license categories. So that's B, retails, that would be like retail locations at sports venues and other places, and then also the C, retail, which are the real problem, which are like lottery, bars and taverns and things like that, which are going to be much harder to get licensed and approved than the mobile sports books who kind of have, a plug-and-play system when they get into a state to get approved.
And I'm going to translate for John real quick because he has to be diplomatic. He says unique challenges in states or unique regulations. What he really means is he's not saying this, is me saying this, overly complicated or they're trying too hard, but he's being nice and calling them unique.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think that goes back to what I was saying. Every state is going to be different, and every state, like, it would just make so much sense. Like, why do you have to make this more difficult than any other state has done it? I mean, you know, and you know, it's seemingly that it doesn't matter what a state does, because then you see what happens in New York, where you have this huge explosion of sports betting, and everyone thinks, oh, everything's great, right? No matter, we charge 51% tax rate, sports betting's still going to be awesome, and everyone's going to make money. Well, I don't know if that's really going to pan out over the long term, but over the short term, people have this view that just get it up there in any way you think that would work, with any nuance that you want to put in there, and it's going to be okay. And I just don't think that's the case.
Across the country on the other coast, you mentioned California and the ballot initiatives that we might have one, we might have two, we might have three, we might have four. That there's a chance that the ballot could be filled up with sports betting options. And it kind of, after a while of covering this, it reminds me of Anchorman, when all of the different news crews are all kind of standing in a circle waiting to get in a fight with each other, and everybody's going after everybody else. And when it comes to tribal interests and card rooms and industry interests and legislators and so on, it's such a complicated state. For those who might not understand what's going on in California, where do we stand at the beginning of 2022?
Sure. It is a complicated state. It becomes a little less complicated that it's actually going to go to the voters, I think, than it would should the legislature have to decide. The legislature, I spent, too many years of my life pulling my hair out trying to get them to approve online poker in California. And now we spent the last 3 years trying to get them to approve sports betting, and they wouldn't do it. So now it's really up to the voters to decide, and I think that's probably a better path forward than any other way. So right now, you are correct. There are 4 competing ballot initiatives. One is guaranteed to be on the ballot, or at least has received all the signatures that they need. Unfortunately for many, but to the delight of the offshore industry, it's for retail sports betting only. It would just allow for retail sports betting at tribal casinos and a handful of racetracks. So that is one that will definitely be on the ballot. The other 3, of the other 3, I think only one of them has a chance of making the ballot, and that is being led by the big national sports betting operators, companies like DraftKings, FanDuel, Bally's, BetMGM, and others have supported this effort, and they are going to, I think, reach the threshold of 1 million signatures that they need to have to get on the ballot, and that will happen sometime, we'll know, I think for sure, sometime in June. And then it's going to get to the voters, right? They're going to have a decision between 2 ballot initiatives. I suspect that at least one side is going to try to drag down the other side, and could muddy the waters for voters to really understand what these ballot initiatives need. I think on a vote of its own, do you support mobile sports betting? Do you want mobile sports betting in California? I think it would pass. I really do, personally. But the question is, will opponents to that measure really try to confuse voters by, casting it into other terms? I mean, they're already sharing polling data and other things that show that Californians don't support mobile sports betting, but I just find that exceedingly hard to believe.
The other big state out there, I think we alluded to, is Florida. Not really a lobbying issue. We have state sports betting was made live by a compact with the governor and the Seminole tribe, shut down in the courts. Now we have the possibility of, again, a ballot measure being led by DraftKings and FanDuel. Actually, I heard CEO Jason Robbins talking on the Dan Le Batard show, trying to get the needed signatures. Where do we stand in Florida in terms of any chance that this gets on the ballot, and we're talking about a legalized online mobile market 2023?
Do they got Le Batard's dad out there collecting signatures? That would be helpful. I don't have any insight, unfortunately, as to where they stand on the signature collection. Based on everything I've seen, they're really short and it seems unlikely to me that they're going to be able to get all the verified signatures that they need by the end of this month. I hope I'm wrong, because I think the voters need an option in Florida, because, the compact, as it's structured, I don't believe is really ever going to pass legal muster. I'm not an attorney. I'll say that right now. So we put that disclaimer. If you want to put John Pappas, not an attorney, under there, that's fine. But it seems to me that the legal arguments against the compact have resonated, at least with some judges, and I don't think there'll be any resolution to this to the legal matter until at least 2023, and that means Floridians are going to be just sitting there waiting unless they get a chance to vote on it on the ballot. But even if they get to the ballot, the crazy thing about Florida is they've got a constitutional requirement that any gaming expansion has to have 60% of the vote. 60%. That is a huge threshold, especially when you consider that, interests that aren't supportive of that are going to throw as much negative attention to that ballot measure and try to derail it. So I think it's an uphill climb, even if they make the ballot, that they could get approved by the voters.
John Pappas representing Idea Growth and, of course, his own Corridor Consulting. Find him on Twitter at Yanni_DC. John, if there's one thing we know, it's that we know nothing. But when we talk to people like you, we start to learn a little bit more about something. So we appreciate your time.
Happy to do it, guys. Love being on. And anytime you want to talk about this crazy world of politics, I'm happy to do it.
Sounds
Take the points with the Chiefs, right? Is that what you were saying? That's what you're saying. Yes.
Give the Chiefs as many points as they want. They're going to crush the Steelers.
Appreciate it, John. Have a good one, man. Over at Corridor Consulting, John Pappas, again, appreciate the time here on the podcast, talking about everything that's going on here coming up in 2022. Adam, I think both of us need to go ahead and just give a couple of minutes to Dustin here and give the floor to him and let him say, listen, I understand I don't have a plethora of options. I know that I'm not going to get to choose from 10 different lines that are out there, but at least I no longer have to bet on this piece of crap that I've been betting on for the last year and a half.
We are getting DraftKings here in Oregon. We are getting rid of the miserable Oregon scoreboard app, which is actually run by a company that is part of DraftKings, but we'll leave that to the side. But DraftKings starting here in less than a week. It opens up. It does not open up the market, however. It's still a monopoly here in Oregon, but I got the press release and I literally got out of my seat and did a little jig because it's so just like you guys and your bad apps in Nevada, I have an awful option here. I can bet legally in Oregon, but it is such a bad experience, and I'm extremely happy, as are many Oregon bettors, to actually have one good app instead of one miserable app here in Oregon.
Yeah.
So we'll also presumably see Oregon pick up in sports betting. They're going to do some marketing here, I'm sure, that they weren't doing before, and should be good things. Now, next thing, open up the market so I can bet on more than one app.
Right.
But that's a story for another day.
Hey, step in the right direction with all of that. I mean, listen, the deal with what Adam and I deal with here, just the incredibly limited menus to go along with the clunky apps. Like we get it right in the backside there, Adam. We don't really get anything good out of this.
Yeah. I asked Dustin this a little earlier this week, and I'm going to renew my call publicly here. If you're not using Scoreboard, can we have it?
Yeah, all yours. I'll ship it off. I'll just send my phone. You can have it.
Thank you. Just send us the code and see if maybe, because I don't know. Maybe it isn't worse than what we're dealing with.
That's
here.
true. I've never
know.
played with it. That's true. I know it might be better than what we've got going on here.
I mean, it's been a while since I've been to Nevada and placed a bet on an app, but it is a better experience than my memory of the Nevada apps. The live betting is still a bit of a disaster, but in terms of markets getting down on a live bet is hard. But I mean, the actual experience is better. And but I haven't had a bonus or a promo or an odds boost or anything like that in like 6 months here. So
what are those, Adam? I don't even know what those are. What are those, Adam? I don't know.
They are like Sasquatch.
I was going to say they're the
they
Bigfoot.
live somewhere else. They're not here.
They're the Bigfoot of the betting industry, I guess, for us here in Nevada. Guys, everything we talk about here on the pod, you can find over at legalsportsreport.com. So be sure to head over there. Check out all of the wonderful words that are getting printed over there on the website. It is absolutely fantastic, keeping you on top of everything that's going on here. You don't have to listen to the hearings. You don't have to talk to the people. You don't have to read the super long bills and all the things like that. We do that for you. So be sure and head over there. Follow Adam on the Twitter machine at Adam Candee, 2 E's, no Y. Follow Dustin at Dustin Gouker. And if you hate yourself, you can follow me at Matt Brown M2. Until next week, for Adam, for Dustin, I'm Matt. Talk to you then.